She is the president and director of people and culture for the BSC Group. Lee Curtis.
If you observe your strengths while you're on your journey, you're really aware of them, follow them where they take you, you will find yourself.
You're making a big difference for sure. What pulled you towards that career path?
I remember I was meeting my first kitten and I was across the street with my neighbors and my mom yelling at me out the window.
What parting words of advice would you have for them?
So that feeling of success that everyone chases, everybody knows what it is, but something that you're looking for that's missing that you call, I want to feel successful.
Well, welcome back, SLAE family. We are here for another episode today. And today we have a fierce female leader in a very male-dominated industry. I'm really excited for you to hear from her. Today we are joined up from Massachusetts by none other than Lee Curtis. She is the president and director of people and culture for the BSC Group. So Lee, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting. I don't know who this fierce female leader is. Is she in the room? You'll have to show me. I'll meet her by the end.
Absolutely. You're just walking around too humble, that's for sure. So before we dive into your leadership and your background, can you tell everybody who's not familiar with the BSC Group a little bit about what that is and what you do?
Sure. BSC is a privately owned consulting firm, so a professional services firm in the AE space, as we call it. So architecture and engineering, or AEC, architecture, engineering, and construction. And our particular company, our largest group, is unique. It's actually ecological services, followed by geomatics. And for those who don't know, that's survey, remote sensing, GIS. And we have a whole slew of engineering services, civil, environmental, transportation, planning, and other. I'm sure I'm missing some, but you kind of get the gist. We're a full service company that really provides solutions for the communities that we work in. So a lot of good stuff.
You're making a big difference for sure. So you do. So can you share with everyone, what was your inspiration to get into, ecological science and conservation? What pulled you towards that career path?
Yeah, and I know I've been thinking about this question. I can't identify any single point of inspiration, not this one moment, but essentially it was my love of animals. And we were talking before, I have 4 dogs mostly in the room with me right now, combined with a string of impulsive decisions that brought me to ecology. And, it's actually kind of amusing to hear myself say that because I self-identify as a classic overthinker, and I have for most of my life. Yet I did make some really big decisions with the mindset of, I like this, let's see where this takes me. This feels right. I guess we could, if you want to be a little bit more hardcore badass about that, we could call that an unconscious tap into raw intuition, right? But really, it just felt like an impulsive decision. When I was a kid, I thought I wanted to be a vet. I remember my first encounter with kittens when I was 4 years old, and I'm going to go with this, but I might be dating myself, but I was having a bit of an Elmira moment. I don't know if anyone knows who that is, but Animaniacs, that girl who was overly enthusiastic about squeezing cute animals and probably was doing harm as she was doing it. I remember I was meeting my first kitten and I was across the street with my neighbors and my mom yelling at me out the window, "You be easy with that kitten." So I remember being so excited and her witnessing me as probably that Elmira. So I know that there was something I was always trying to connect with there. After that, I rescued injured rabbits and birds from my paper route. For those who don't know what that is, gross. I'm also dating myself on that one. But we actually delivered papers on a bike to people. And they
newspapers for the young people. Newspapers. They used to do things like that.
That's true.
Back in the day of cassette tapes, but continue.
So many stories there. We could just have spin-offs for, but on the rare occasion, I also went to camp. And as a kid, the other girls were crafting and braiding each other's hair or playing dress up. And I was usually alone in some woodland clearing by myself, trying to figure out how to get dragonflies to land on me. And growing up in an urban environment, I grew up in Haverhill, Mass. I was always pulled to nature in my own weird way. And we had a historic cemetery in our backyard. That was my closest open space. And we definitely played in there more than we probably should have. If this was a podcast for Gen Xers, I could go a lot of places, but I guess I was fascinated with the horse chestnut and its spiky offerings and how we could roast them. So there were a lot of little moments of inspiration that brought me here. And back in my day, as I just described it, I know, get off my lawn. If you liked animals, you are often guided toward veterinary medicine. And I was too. I pursued that for a bit. I went to an agricultural technical high school. I took animal science. We got to work for part of the school year in a co-op. And I got a job as a receptionist in a vet's office. And this is a long story, but parts of it matter. Also helped with some tech work. And I was 15. This was such an important milestone for me because one, I realized I hated veterinary medicine. I was not built to be a vet. And two, that job, that one first job really pushed me to finding my own way of interacting with people. And at 15, I was so shy and afraid of doing the job wrong. I almost got fired for being afraid to answer the phones. I was like, I don't know how to do this. I'm going to do this the wrong way. I'm going to say the wrong thing. I was really getting in my own way. So I owe them for giving me that chance and helping me find myself through that experience. It had purpose. I've digressed, but through that high school experience, I found myself on the verge of college, shifting my focus away from veterinary medicine. What the heck am I going to do? That was my junior and senior year. And I went back toward the natural world. I was catching those dragonflies again, and I pursued a major in natural resources, also called wildlife conservation as you moved into it. I was fully prepared to make zero money, living the life of a park ranger in khakis somewhere in the middle of nowhere. But that was what I was going to do. That was my life vision at that time. I was ready for it. It was a purpose that I thought I had. And my advisor in college noticed my analytical mind and specifically my strength for applying regulatory framework to science. And I landed in a master's program for wetlands conservation. Then enter private consulting, hence BSC. And to this day, it's still so satisfying for me to understand systems, especially ecosystems and habitats, and where I can find a certain plant and what the healing properties of that plant might be and how having one insect in your backyard can affect the wildlife you have. So there's just something about knowing things that other people don't know in terms of systems and interconnectedness that makes me feel, I don't know, I'll say connected. It's a long answer, but there's a lot there.
No, it's really interesting because you're so drawn to nature, but you do have an incredibly analytical, scientific mind at the same time. So it's very unique that you found a way to marry the two and put something together and create a business out of it for sure. So when you look at, where you've been and the progress that you've made, what do you think has happened in terms of influencing you to now you are the director of people and culture? And that's a really interesting title. And I'd love for you to take a second and talk about that evolution.
My career change. Yeah. And there's a few steps in between before I became that. But yeah,
Yes.
how did I change my focus from what we call in the industry to bugs and bunnies? That's a typical term they use for us ecologists, and into business. In business, I would say with the people in culture focus that I've gone from bugs and bunnies to people. And peopling is a term I use a lot. So I ended up in a position that now requires me to focus more on human dynamics than anything else. Being in business, I'll say, never mind the C-suite, so to speak, was never on any vision board. And like I said, khakis in the trees, that's where I was going. And it certainly wasn't in my 10-year plan, my 20-year plan, didn't even show up. So it's so interesting. And in this season of my life, I do truly believe this. If you observe your strengths while you're on your journey, you're really aware of them and you follow them where they take you, you will find yourself. And it's not always obvious, but if you focus on those things, you will find your path. Graduating as an ecologist in the trees, no one would ever have convinced me in a million years that I would be in an executive position in the corporate world. At that time, when I took my first job, even thought private consulting was the devil. I wanted to work for the state or the federal government. And if I took a private job, I was selling out and I just couldn't do it. And then I did it. And, there's that. I learned a lot from all of that. And it isn't the devil. You can do so much good, but that was me at the time. And the true path to purpose, I'll say, for the sake of this discussion, is windy, and it even includes backtracking for a lot of folks, including myself. But this is what it looks like when you're learning who you are and what you truly connect with, both in your personal and professional experience in life. It looks different for everyone. There's no right way to grow. So I know a lot of people would say, well, I didn't get a degree in this. I have to focus on what I got my degree in. Luckily, I didn't do that because where I am now is nowhere close to what I got my degrees in, but it got me there. Do we have time for a rabbit hole in this one? I know I'm kind
Oh,
of
let's throw in a rabbit hole. Listen, we just talked about bugs and bunnies
all right,
anyway.
that's perfect.
Let's go down
Yeah,
the rabbit
I
hole.
know there's a cute fuzzy context in there somewhere. It may not be a bunny, but it's something cute and fuzzy. So I guess the way I look at it now, and this is a little vulnerable moment of kind of leading up to what shifted in me and why it needed to shift, but I was running toward nature and away from people the first half of my life. Maybe even longer than that, but at least the first half of my life. And after a bit of burnout and some coaching, which I was really lucky to have, and yeah, even therapy, I suggest everyone go. It's good for all humans. I had some major realizations. While my love for nature is definitely real, at the same time, I also realized I was guarding and protecting this vulnerability, and what I like to call it now is my light, but not allowing myself to be a certain way or focus on certain things because I just wasn't good enough or I didn't deserve them. And everybody has our past trauma, our little T and our big T trauma, and that was definitely playing in for me. And I know everyone has their own story, and I can connect to when I was little, again, loving animals, but also creative. I was creative. I was imaginative, at times fearless, and I was quite the talker and a bit of a natural leader in my comfort zone when I was a kid. I remember the day that all of that kind of changed, and I call it my tween years. It's a term we use now. It was the 4th of July, and it's so strange how something that seemed this small at the time was it really just changes your whole path in life. But it was the 4th of July with the same group of friends, partly expanded though, boys and girls at this one, and we were all at carnival trying to decide what to do. I was giving my opinion enthusiastically, like I always did when I was young. And I always had a lot of ideas, but no one was listening. This was the first time that just none of my friends cared. No one was listening. Some were even laughing at me. And it was in that moment that I realized that I guess I'll use the term my agency. I'd diminished because of what I didn't have. I wasn't popular by 6th grader standards, which are pretty high standards. I did not abide by beauty standards. I was from a low income family, was and am a bit quirky, a bit of a geek, a spaz, different, unique, artistic, what everybody wants to call it. I dressed like what they said a tomboy was back in the day, which was funny because I hated sports and I didn't play any. I just dressed that way. I was smart, but I didn't really want to be seen for that. I didn't care about makeup. I didn't care about boys. I didn't care about malls. I didn't fit in anywhere. And it seemed to become more and more important as you get into those teenage years. And I continued to notice how much having less than or being different from the norm affected where and how I was included or whether I was heard. And I retreated into another version of myself, I guess I'd say, a guarded, people-pleasing version of myself, a version that I felt didn't deserve certain thoughts, feelings, ambitions. And I kept pushing toward a path that was maybe easier in some ways, harder in others, but certainly not right for me, just to avoid putting myself in situations where I could be hurt for being myself, which is kind of the reason I went toward nature and away from people. But that light-filled, fiery, quirky, nerdy, natural leader I was tapping into when I was 7, 8, or 9 is who I'm now getting to know again today. And it's been a roller coaster, but that's what has led me toward people, because that was always my pure connection, was figuring out a way to lead and creating experiences for people and being creative and getting them to see the best in themselves. And I lost that along the way. And I'm finding it again now in a very different way than I ever expected. But I just wanted to go down that rabbit hole and give some context.
Oh, that wasn't a rabbit hole. That was really inspiring, honestly. And having been in the same journey as you in many ways, I was never a popular kid. I never went through any of that. Sometimes though, the bumps and bruises or the loneliness ends up bringing out leadership in people because you have to really make your own path when you're a little off the beaten path, so to speak. So tell me, with all of that, what parallels would you draw between maybe ecological science and corporate or people leadership and who you are today? How would you parallel those two?
Okay, yeah, so that one's a good one. The way I see true leadership, and it's probably come out in spurts already, is kind of like an interconnection or an interconnected ecosystem. It's not just the CEO or the C-suite or the president that leads, it's everyone. Everyone contributes to the health of the whole, just like an ecosystem out in nature. We're our own ecosystem. Every company, every team has its own ecosystem. We all have a personal responsibility, as I like to say it, to practice self-awareness, to find ourselves, to step up into our strengths. I think I've seen or heard it referred to as nurturing our capacities and fostering the collective well-being. And I love those terms because, like, or trees in a forest or insects in a pond, they all have purpose, and each one of us is part of that larger system. We can either create a healthy ecosystem where we're showing up who we are and finding the true root of ourselves, or a toxic environment where we're not and we're hiding from it and we have regrets and we are, potentially pushing some of those regrets on others. It all depends on how we show up. And ecological principles, which I will not go into, that's a different podcast, but can remind us that leadership is not, it's not about one person. It's the interconnected actions of everyone in that system. Some could even call that corporate culture if you wanted to stretch it, but it's the behaviors and actions of everyone. And we all lead every day in our own way. So it's a system. That's my connection.
I love that. I love that. And in your role as a leader, what do you think have been, maybe some of the bigger obstacles that you've ever had come across, and how did you overcome them?
I'd say the biggest obstacle, I'm freezing, obstacle or challenge, I guess I'll name two, but one is me, myself. I'm the problem, it's me. And two, all the same challenges so many women face in a male-dominated industry. There are so many, and these two are also very much interrelated or interconnected. Many of the challenges I've had with myself and finding myself, being myself, as I alluded to in the last question, is society's expectation of how a woman should show up to certain positions, situations, and our need to be over-prepared and overachieving at all times in order to feel just worthy, not even equal, but just worthy of an opportunity. In terms, I was going to say, let me talk about how to overcome that, but I haven't yet. So I don't really have a solution, but I am just now learning how to break down walls and barriers and to allow myself to use some corporate jargon, circle back to find or connect with the young girl I was when I was my truest self, and when I carried that light within. I'm actively and openly rebelling against the concept of perfection and perfectionism. I'm trying to bring vulnerability into leadership whenever I can. As I like to call myself, a recovering perfectionist, I have lots of strengths, but the dark side of those strengths are some of my greatest weaknesses. And that's just part of who most humans are. And what brings you to the table is the strongest version of yourself. And some have always called it overused strengths, but there's also another side to that, which can sometimes frustrate people. But that, to me, is what bringing your whole self to work means. And building those strong relationships is everyone getting to know themselves for both of those things, not just one of them, and hiding the rest under the rug. So it's hiding or denying your weaknesses can bring shame. And everyone should, read some of Brene Brown's books on that, as being vulnerable.
She is awesome, isn't she?
Oh, yeah. So I work to own my weaknesses every day, and I encourage others to do the same. I resist the urge to seek protection under the I can do everything well umbrella, because it's not real, and it continues to give life to a narrative that just isn't healthy for women, especially women who are people of color. Just trying to show up with, as a 12 on the scale of 1 to 10. It's not healthy. We can't do it. And continuing to perpetuate the narrative that that's something that people can actually do by hiding and faking and navigating and working 70 hours a week isn't healthy, and it's not right. And we need to start changing it. And I know there are a lot of people out there that are doing that same work. So while that may sound easy, just don't be perfect. To those lacking similar lived experiences, it very much is not easy. It's actually quite hard to show up and say you don't know something, or that you don't know everything, or that you don't have all the experience in this area, especially when you're an executive level. There's an expectation put on you, especially as a woman, that you, in order to be there, right now I'm 45, as a 45-year-old woman, that you must have done something magical to gain that position. And yeah, working hard is magical, but we shouldn't always feel like we have to be that 12% on the 1 to 10 scale, or the the 175% in order to deserve it, because we deserve it the same way everybody else does. So we need to start changing that. So does that make sense?
Honestly, that could have been the whole podcast right there. I almost hate to ask you anything, because that's basically every woman who is, career driven, ambitious in an executive position. That you just summed up everybody's life, because you do feel like there's this incredible pressure to over deliver, to be overqualified, to be superwoman, to be able to do everything, finish it all, fly home in your invisible jet, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Now the invisible jet joke. I'm dating myself with that one. Young people. So when
I hear women every day who I think are like star players saying, "I'm failing at everything. I'm not showing up the way I want to at work. I'm not being a good mother. I'm not being a good wife." And they are, but there's just this standard of being 150% that they feel they have to meet in order to say I'm good. And it's not good. It's not okay. It's not healthy. And we're working to change it. So.
And you're so right, because a lot of men don't feel like that. They're like, okay, if I did well at work today, peace out, I'm done. They don't feel like they have to come home and be super dad, super husband, super, like just that constant, I have to spin all the plates at the same time. So, when you look at that journey and when you look at your insight on all of that, what are some of the moments that you're really proud of that you can reflect on?
I'll tie this into the whole statement from
when you're not trying to be perfect, just a great moment in there,
Yes. Yeah. And there was a time in my life where I probably would have showed up to this question saying, I haven't done anything spectacular. And you and I have been talking enough. It still comes out of me from time to time. Even at the beginning, who is this fierce woman you're talking about? Because so proud isn't really the right word sometimes. It feels like proud isn't really the right word. In the previous version of myself, I would feel like I'm not allowed to be proud. Many of us are taught not to boast. And for a lot of women, that is stating openly what you are proud of about yourself. You can be proud of kids and your colleagues and your husband and your family, your pets. But if you start talking about yourself, sometimes it's like, she's a little into herself. Why is she boasting? It's not attractive. So, well, I'm going to try to break that. But while I haven't always made the right decisions, or I've made the right decisions for the wrong reasons, some hiding and self-work, I am proud of everything that I've accomplished, little things and big things. I've learned I am incredibly resourceful and resilient, and that my true strengths, my true me, that's transferable. I can do it in this job. I can do it in a different job. Once you tap into what you're just naturally good at, there's just a sense of safety in it. And reaching that milestone, maybe not professional, but I'm trying to pass it along to a lot of professionals like me. It goes a long way to preventing burnout, allowing work-life balance, and bringing out just the strongest version of yourself to force change. So I love that. And if I wanted to get specific about it, I guess I'd say I've achieved many milestones before years of experience in my industry would dictate. And I have learned a lot about those beautiful, but also not so healthy drivers. And I'm learning to change and balance that. What makes me most, how do I want to start this?
Just go for it. Live on the edge. Be proud of yourself. It's okay. A lot.
What makes me feel most whole is using my wiring. That's what I call it. In my lived experiences in a way that builds up others and fosters a unique vision or reality for what leadership looks like. And I'm in a position now to do that. And I've been bringing a lot of my own lived experiences and lessons into that. And when I say wiring, I do this with my colleagues, I like to refer to my brain or my thought process as a murder board. On a true crime show or a thriller show or a movie, when detectives are all standing around looking at the board trying to find a suspect, and it's full of photos, and you have strings and tacks and color codes and all the different connections at play, all the different paths that they're trying to analyze. That's what my brain does. It does it well. Maybe it's an undiagnosed late ADHD. I don't know, but I'm using it.
It's working for you. That's how.
It sees connections and things others don't. It sees potential in people that others don't. And I have hired and informally coached so many different people who are now finding their path and purpose, or are on their way to, So their connection to their true selves. And that, to me, of all the things I've done, all the accolades that you could check off, president at 43 and project manager 4 years in, this is the one I'm most proud of, is because I am actually, it's not an achievement per se, it's influencing change for a lot of other people. And that's what I think I'd say I'm most proud of. So
Oh, I
we'll
love
go there.
that. I love that. And if you would indulge, I have to say that because I know it's out of your comfort zone a little bit, but if you would indulge it reflecting on some of the success stories you've had and some of the things you've accomplished, would you mind sharing where you can see you've had a big impact, whether it's yourself or others or in the community? Where can you see some things that you've really been able to make a difference?
I don't think this will actually be new content, so it's fine. Yeah, I will indulge. I know when I was thinking about something along the lines of this question, I actually asked one of my colleagues, is that there are so many things that I could talk about here, and I'm not really sure what to say, but you are one of the others I may have impacted, good or bad. What would you say? And she said, I'm going to find my little note. She said, well, when I look at that question, what first came to mind was your initiative with the right person, right role, that's what you call it, and tapping into people's strengths and really finding those strengths and then not giving up on them because they haven't fit the mold of a certain team or a certain expectation or a certain position or a certain personality type. And she said, I've seen you put effort into many people in that regard, including me, and I'm so grateful. So that to me, it's like just right there, just having someone answer that question is a success story. And the right people, right role thing is very much what I've already been talking about, but the term came from me utilizing tools that focus on a diversity of behaviors and how they show up at work. And one of them was the predictive index, to give it credit. And trying to use my position now and my power to help people realize where they so naturally fit versus where they think they should. And that's especially important because especially for women and many others that are in the minority that are like, I should show up this way in order to be accepted. And I want to move away from that. It's where do you naturally fit, not where should you, and giving them that purpose and work-life balance back. So we know we've talked about that, but the fact that I'm not the only one seeing it and it is affecting others, that is new. That is a success story for me. It's a big one.
That's phenomenal. And I love the journey that you're on and that you are doing all this because being around you will inspire other people. Hearing your story will inspire other people. So with all of that, what are some of the upcoming initiatives? You've accomplished an incredible amount. You're doing so many things. Where do you want to go in the future? What's next for you?
Oh, a lot of things. I don't even know what they all are yet. So I'd say in my current position right now, in the next 3 to 5 years, my biggest goal or my biggest plan is to lead the company through this transition. I feel like I have 100 projects that I'm excited about, and it's really hard to choose, but they're all part of that transition. Both, I'll pick a big one and a small one, and we'll go there just so I'm not seemingly avoiding your question. But for the big guns, I'd say, yeah, it's moving the company through a transition that is with new leadership, a new leadership structure, a new culture, and achieving probably in a way we haven't in the 60 years we've existed, our 5-year strategic goals. Why is that exciting, might you say? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but it's mostly because that ecological leadership model that I talked about above is taking root. And for the first time since I've been in this business, I'm seeing what it can do to empower individuals in their own personal strengths and their own personal powers. 5 years is not a long time in the realm of business for a mindset and culture shift this unique, but I think we will be looking back at what felt like 15 years at the end of our 5-year strategic plan. And I know, like you said, a lot of people are loving it, embracing it, and moving toward it. And there are some that are fighting it. And that's typical in every transition. And I'm going for the 80-20 rule that if I can get 80% of the team on board with this, that what we can actually accomplish, just being ourselves, not the expectation of what we're supposed to be. There'll be a really good case study coming out of that 5 years, seeing what we were able to do, not following the norm. And I'm looking forward to that. And a small one is this is my first podcast. It's a growth area for me. It's a stretch area for me. So I'm excited to see how it comes out. If I feel horrible about it, well, it's a learning experience. We can all learn.
But what's really incredible about a podcast is it gives you a chance to express yourself, but it gives other people a chance to relate to you. And some people will hear this on audio, some people will see this on YouTube. But what's so fun is you've accomplished so much. You're a female president in higher executive position in a very male dominated industry. And for the people who can't see you, you're also fun. You got tattoos, and I know you've played with some purple hair in there. And you're really expressing yourself, and you get to be a powerful unicorn in an industry, which is amazing. So if somebody is listening to this and they're an aspiring leader in whatever field they're in, what parting words of advice would you have for them?
So that feeling of success that everyone chases, everybody knows what it is. That's something that you're looking for that's missing, that you call, I want to feel successful, is less achievement. That it's not really about achievement. That addiction to achievement keeps a lot of us going and driving forward. But you'll notice at a certain point of your life, usually midlife for women, but sometimes earlier, you never really arrive there. And to me, it's more about, for lack of a better term, and I've used before, it's connection. So connection to who you really are, what your natural strengths are. How do you light up a room if that's where you shine? Not everyone's extroverted, but some are. How do you positively affect other people? Sure, sometimes you can characterize that as something you do the best or better than anyone you know, but oftentimes it's really just a natural action that you take, or a feeling that you have that makes you feel good. It's not always fancy. It's not always flashy. It's certainly not something that's on the top 10 ways that make you money, but it will bring you that contentment or that connection or that happiness or that joy, whatever it is that you want to call it. You can spend so much time in that space, that content space, knowing that you have this connection to who you are and you know what you're supposed to bring to that table. You could spend 60 hours in that space and not feel burnt out. It can feel like you worked a 10-hour week. You still have gas in the tank on a Friday night. You're not like, oh my God, please don't make me talk to somebody or go out for a cocktail. I don't want to do it. It's Friday. I'm tired. But if you're stretching to be something that you're not, even if it's 40 hours a week or 32 hours a week, for the sake of image or accomplishment or achievement or an outdated version of success or society's definition of what success is, you will feel exhausted, and at times you will feel lost, and you'll be trying to figure out how to find that again. And the overused term, be yourself, with the sunshine, often feels empty because people who say it don't often mean it when they say it. They often mean, stand out or try not to be nervous or do a little bit of something to entertain to show that you're different. But it really is true that just that simple statement. And to say it differently, I guess I'd say you have to know yourself and accept yourself for exactly who you are before you can be truly happy. Or if you're not going for happy, you can say content still applies here. Don't just keep driving forward with blinders on. You have to do the self-work. If you've lost the 8-year-old in you, you have to find them again. There are more than 100 ways to do a thing. You need to know how you would do the thing and then keep doing it that way. And it sounds so simple and people are going to say, oh, I'm not going to do that. But it's just so true. There's just such a raw truth in it that I ask you all to spend a little time with it. Just entertain it. Just try it and see how you feel differently. That's all.
Love it. Well, thank you so much again, everyone. This has been a pleasure with Lee Curtis, who is the president and director of People and Culture at BSC Group. Thank you so much for taking the time to give us a little bit about your journey and share how to be a powerful unicorn as an executive in a male world. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Leanne. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, so much.